Checo, Checo! Born to roll! I think we are recording.
That's great news.
We are recording. The Little River Band comes through. Thank you very much for your patience with the technical difficulties, Laura, and thank you again for being on the podcast Born to Roam, coming at you from, are you in Chicago still?
I am in Chicago, yes.
Right on. How is Chicago treating you?
Chicago right now is really gray and rainy. It's been gray and rainy for the past 2 days. I currently have a broken foot, so I haven't left my apartment since November 9th or something like that. And I've been homebound since then. And regardless, there's a stay-at-home advisory in effect, so they don't want you going anywhere if there's anywhere that's even open. So I don't know. Chicago's kind of a fucking drag, but so is how's Hamilton? I mean, pretty much everywhere is, right?
Yeah, it's kind of alternating between sleet and snow and absolutely thick fog. So it's pretty ominous here. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of perfect weather, I think, to stay inside and try and work on all the hobbies that I said I was going to take up when I wasn't on tour. And I've kind of yet to actually.
Have you gotten all that done, son?
I have. I started painting, and that's been fun. And learning how to finger pick on the acoustic guitar, but that was something that I wanted to get around to doing. But yeah, other than that, just working on songs and learning to not let the plants die, because there's no excuse now. You know, I'm home, I can water them, but still they keep dropping like flies. I don't know.
I always look for the plants that say like low light and minimal care. They have to have a tag that says that for me to buy them, because I'm like, I need cactuses in my life. Otherwise, everything is going to die. But I've taken to having some house plants as well in this off time.
That's good. Anything delicate or more the kind of desert variety that requires a little less attention?
Yeah, it's all like Chinese evergreens, you know, like low light, low water, low care, aloe plants. Stuff like that. Air plants. I'm obsessed with the idea lately of like surrounding myself with plants while I sleep and breathing as like pure of oxygen as I possibly can. I'm really into that idea. So I've been trying to create my own like personal little sanctuary in that way.
A little oasis. I like it. Mm-hmm. I was just mentioning before to you that I was moving, and I was moving a couple cactuses, and I kind of tripped, and they both kind of stuck to my arms while I was moving them. So I'm a little off the cactuses for a second. I'm trying to find something that's a little less painful, but it seems to be the only thing that will let me love it. So
they are good touring friends, you know.
They are. So I wanted to say, first off, congratulations on Stay Alive. It's fucking awesome. I fucking love it so much.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. To me, it reminds me of one of the reasons why I really love your music, Laura, is because it feels like a continuation of the great American folk tradition. You've got you really put me onto bands like the Mountain Goats when we were touring together, and I see this album is such, as I said, a great continuation of that, of just short, no filler, just to the point, hard on your sleeve songs, and I really, really love it. And the songs that you have some kind of electrical accompaniment, they kind of sound like this like 8-bit kind of video game music from the 80s. It's just an awesome record. I can't recommend it highly enough. Anybody that hasn't heard Stay Alive yet, it is fantastic. And in particular, I really love Mountain Song. That one's the one that's I've been blasting on repeat. But I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about that in particular. So when this whole thing really unraveled in March or so, did you kind of sit down and start kind of plunking away on the acoustic and coming up with something to do in your free time that you suddenly had an abundance of, or did you have some of these songs lying around?
I had started writing them as soon as I finished doing the last record I did, Baccarat, in 2018. So really they had been building over like two and a half plus years or whatever. And we had been working towards an Against Me record, and had been like, in the studio a little bit January, in a little bit February, then March, and then left on a tour. So we had been working on songs, but we had like 30 plus songs that we were working through. Wow. So, it wasn't like there was already this Against Me record that was fully formed and we knew what we were going to do and we were just ready to record, and then this happened and then we just couldn't record. We were still kind of figuring out our way. Like a lot of these songs that work on the record, I think, weren't working for us as a band. So I'm not sure they would have ever been Against Me songs, is what I'm saying. But they existed. I had like an abundance of songs. So when this happened, in March, like I came back and was just kind of stunned really for a good month, as like every tour started falling apart, and we had to cancel the next thing and cancel the next thing. And it became more and more clear what this was, and then like realizing that, as far as making a record, we were at a standstill too, because no one lives in the same place. Like two of the people Against Me are in Florida, Adam's in California. Like 3 out of 4 of us are parents. No one felt comfortable traveling. So, it's like, what do? I've got like 30 some odd songs. They're not really working with the band that great. I think there's still some good songs. Are we not going to play together for a year, 2 years? In 2 years, are we really going to want to come back after a plague and be like, hey, everybody, let's jump back into those 35 songs we weren't really jamming on? That'll be great.
Yeah.
But so I was like caught in this juxtaposition of like, look, I realize this isn't working right now with the band. And also the universe is like not going to let it happen. But at the same time, I've done a lot of work as a songwriter here. And I mean, in 30 plus songs, I want to think that there's a decent album. Like I can pull an album out of this, and realizing then also once I started looking at it that way, like a lot of the songs just worked better in that arrangement, just broken down and not trying to build more. Cause like, you said that they're short, and they are, but a lot of the times with writing songs for the band, I'll think in the mindset of like trying to highlight other people in the band of like, okay, well, we need an intro or a re-intro or a bridge, so there can be a guitar solo, or something like that. When you don't have that option, when it's just you and acoustic guitar, you don't have to write that part. So you just like, that's it. It's just the lyrics and the chords, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that kind of brings me to my next question. When you and you kind of already answered it there, but because of the way that your career works now and you have a number of avenues available to you, and when you're writing at this point now, do you kind of put on your Against Me hat and say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do for this? Or do you kind of just start with an idea and then kind of allocate it, to which project you think it's going to sort it the best, or does it kind of depend on what your needs are at the time?
I guess it's more about writing in the interest of avoiding writer's block and like being in perpetual flow, where I will journal with the aim of and the thought of like, if I keep journaling and I'm always writing, then I'm always writing lyrics. And anytime that I'm working on a song, I'll have a notebook that I can open and there'll be words in it that I can try to draw lyrics from, if I'm not feeling inspired or whatever. So similarly, like I want to always be writing songs. So no matter what life circumstance is happening, with whatever is going on with the band or another avenue of playing with Adam or Mark with Devouring Mother stuff, if that comes up, then I'm ready for that. So it's not like just, oh, this has to be an Against Me song. It's just like, I want to write songs and always have songs in my pocket so that I can use them for wherever makes sense, you know?
I 100% know what you mean. And I think, I can only speak for myself personally, but I feel like my optimism and my positive outlook on life is intrinsically connected to how many new songs I have in my pocket that I feel good about, where you kind of feel like, it's going to be a bright future because I got this one about, whatever, like, that's kind of how, at least I personally feel. So I really empathize with you about that, about it's just a process of just trying to just make as much as you can that you really believe in, I guess, with the time that you have.
I really genuinely believe like you're only as good as the last song you wrote. And I also tend to get in, if I like leave too long between writing, like I get into the mindset of like, oh, I'll never write again. I've lost it. I don't know how to do this. So like, I don't want to fall into that. So it's just keep writing, and don't think about it. And I like that more of like, of then just like, as opposed to booking the time in the studio and then being under a deadline to come up with stuff to write, to just more like realize like, oh, I've got a bunch of stuff. I could book time right now and I could go in and make something, and then, seeing what happens from it. I like that approach. It's fun.
Have you had times in your career, particularly with Against Me, where you didn't have a ton of material, but you guys went into a studio with the intention of just kind of writing in the studio? And how did that work out for you, if you did do that?
Yeah, to a couple of different variations of that respect. Like we definitely had record commitments where like we were set to go into the studio, had a release date and everything, and had kind of bluffed our way into it where we're like, we didn't have the songs, but that being said, like there was shorter studio time. So we weren't really writing in the studio. We just crammed it all at the last minute, like wrote, came up with a bunch of stuff, and 25-minute long records that are barely full lengths, really, like extending the space in between the songs to stretch it. But then at the same time, we've with the setup we've had for the past couple records, we had the luxury of kind of taking our time because it wasn't necessarily billed by the hour. Like at Mark, Mark, who tour manages Against Me and who plays bass at Devouring Mothers. That kind of, his studio in Michigan kind of became our de facto home base since we were all spread out. Like I have a spot here in Chicago, but there, because there was lodging, everyone flies in, everyone stays there, and then everyone wakes up and we play music all day. Because it wasn't like being billed by an hourly rate at a studio, it gave us the like option. And because we were coming there in between tours, it was like, you have forever in the studio now. You can spend a year working on this record in and out of the studio. And that, like, we ran into like that became obstacles of its own. Like the pressure for some of us, it being easy in the moment to come up with stuff of like, you get 4 people in a room, 3 people, however many, and you're all looking at each other like, okay, come up with something, like it's not as easy as that all the time, And that's why, like I was saying with the lyrics, it's like, I always want to have lyrics. I always want to have something. I always want to record things. So if I am in those situations, I can be like, I have an idea that we could build on, both situations.
So on that note, I'd love to kind of keep going down the path of kind of writing tendencies. And one of the questions that I had for you in terms of your general process, and I know things kind of for a lot of people evolve over time, but are you like a chords and lyrics at the same time kind of person, or do you like coming up with a melody for your vocals and then working on kind of filling in the gaps with lyrics as you go? Are you a tinkerer, or do you try and mandate yourself to try and get as much done with the first kind of burst of inspiration that you have for something, or do you just tinker with something until you get basically ripped off it?
Okay, I tend to write lyrics first. Every once in a while, I will get like every once in a while, like a melody will come to me from wherever. I'll dream songs sometimes and like wake up with like, oh, I've got this like I'll put words to it later, but it's a melody and I'll record it. Sometimes that happens, but I tend to write lyrics first. And my thinking with that is that you're limited by chords. Like there are only so many chords. You're not going to invent any new chords. It's your song's either going to be G, D, C, or A, B, fucking F sharp, whatever. Like it's all been done before. So I want to set up the furniture first and then build the room around it, as opposed to building the room and then setting up the furniture in it. That's my general approach with lyrics. But I used to be a purist of it has to be like in the moment. It had to be what came to be then. It all has to work and I don't want to change anything. And eventually I became more of a tinkerer, where I realized it really is only about the cadence and the amount of syllables, and like you could fit anything into a different line in a verse or in a chorus. And once I kind of realized that, like I just wasn't thinking that way when I was younger, I've become more liberal with it, and I'm glad to have become more able to kill my darlings, if you will, like realizing that nothing should be so precious. It's all about serving the song. But because I'll get trapped in the mindset of feeling like, oh, like I'm not doing really anything interesting right now with the guitar, but I got a kind of vocal pattern here. And then if I keep working on that, inevitably, even if it's the most generic chord pattern or whatever, I know that I can get it to a place where it is unique, that it doesn't have to be where it starts from. Because a lot of time it's that initial, like, oh, it's just not brilliant right away, that will kill a lot of things that could have been really good eventually if you had worked on it.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying. And it's funny because, I mean, personally for me, when I have my fondest memories of creative moments where you feel like you're just an antenna, where you almost didn't feel like you did it, like you just kind of transmitted it. Always the times where I came up with something the easiest are my happiest memories, and the things that I had to just like go crazy over and toss and turn at night trying to think of how to make the bridge work better. I always am like, yeah, fuck that song. But those are, I mean, typically have been the more important songs for our humble little catalog. But it's funny because, as I said, like the ones that are the easiest, that cause the least amount of stress, are typically my favorite looking back. But as you said, like when you have a tinkering relationship with things, it's all about the end product rather than trying to be too precious about the initial inspiration. And I don't know, the whole thing, all of writing is madness to some extent, I think, to try and just get things down and get something out of yourself that didn't exist before.
I've been lucky though that I've had a long perspective. I've been doing this a while and been able to have seen it differently, where sometimes those songs that will be really belabored, and you'll spend a lot of time on, like I've had my relationship change with them over periods of time. It always surprises me where you're writing a record and you're like, these are the good songs. I know these are the good songs, and I know these are the songs that aren't that great, but they're good for the record, and it's fine. But like realistically, we're not going to play it that much live, But then flash forward 10 years, this random song that was really belabored, you felt like was really stale, didn't like it on the record, your fan base hated it initially. 10 years later, I found myself up there on stage being like, and here's this song, and everyone really liking it, and myself liking it, and having come full circle on it, and being like, oh, yeah, it really was worth all the work, Like the Mountain song, for instance, is one of the, off of Stay Alive, is like one of the first songs I wrote for the record. And I wrote that song, I was like, well, that was a good exercise. That's a throwaway song. Let's move on to something that's not such a sad sack of shit of a song. Like, just like, Jesus Christ, get over yourself. And like, didn't think about it ever again, but then kept coming back to it, and then was like, you know what? I actually think I like that song 2 years later, it always surprises you.
That's I think that's a very good point that you illustrated, that, when the more time that you have with this craft, the more you can kind of I mean, the more time there is to kind of change your relationship with things that you've done in the past. And I think that I guess I've been working on songs personally for like 14 years or so. But at first I was so precious about everything and being like, it has to be like this and it has to be like that. But the more time that goes by, the more you kind of or I find myself softening in my approach towards the whole thing and more towards, I just want to get the thing done and be as happy as I can about it and then move on and not make up my mind how I totally feel about it in the moment and just let that kind of unfold as time goes by. As I said, I used to be very dogmatic with these things and it prevented me from getting stuff done.
Sure.
But, as you said, like kind of moving towards a more tinkerer oriented. And I think it's just also just a patience that we all learn at our own pace to not try and drill something into the ground before it's done and give something its time to mature if it requires more work and time.
It's funny. I was thinking about this, like a related thing the other day, actually, where having recently with Against Me, some of the last shows we did were full album shows where we went back and did like 2 albums each night in 2 cities and for each stop. And it's interesting where, like, with what you're saying, like, in some ways I have become more dogmatic and more just like, it has to be written. The song has to be written. Nothing is going to be luck or happenstance of this just happened in the studio or playing live in the moment. Where, when you're younger, it's easier to have those moments, I think, a lot of the time because you're playing so tight because you've been touring so much or you've been, playing so many shows. And the songs kind of write themselves that way of like, instinctively when I'm playing live, this is this weird thing I do in this moment right here, that kind of I happened into and it's cool. And your songs are built in that way. And then when you get out of the habit of playing those songs, if you ever have to come back to those type of songs, like, you can't figure them out the same way because you didn't actually write anything. It was all these moments that just happened that were captured and you can't recreate those moments. So when you go back to try, you'd be faking it if you tried to recreate it, even if you knew what you did. But so you go back and you try like to learn them and you realize you can't. Whereas the songs that you dogmatically and pragmatically were like, this is how the strumming pattern is in the verse. And this is exactly what the BPM is, like, those songs you realize like 20 years from now, I will be able to go back and learn the song because it was written. It exists. It was written completely methodically thought out. I don't know. There's something to be said for both, but it's interesting.
When you think back on some of those songs from your earlier career that you were writing with the band that were more a reflection of just your instincts rather than like a consciously written thing, that when you made those songs, that they were a reflection of touring all the time and being really tight all together, and trying to get back in that mindset is tougher because they were just
sure. It's not only just the mindset, but just like even the nature of the approach, of like, I guess when you're starting out, you're on such a wing and a prayer in so many ways of just like, let's just get together. Let's just get in that practice space. We're going to make it work. Like I've got this idea. Let's make it work, and the things that happen when they're really good, you almost don't know how to explain it. Like when I look at even the structure of some of like the early Against Me songs, I'm like, what is that structure? I wasn't plotting it out like, intro, verse, chorus, pre-chorus. Then, like it wasn't in that way. It was just all lucky happenstance things that you can take and you can look at and be like, well, that's actually your chorus there, but it wasn't thought out that way. And so in those ways I've changed, I guess. Yeah. But it's not genuine to go back and try to fake it and do it that way again, just because that was the time and the place, I
see what you're saying. Can I ask you a question about one of your songs in particular? I've just been curious.
Yeah, of course.
Over the years. Can you talk about the song Black Me Out and how did it begin as the riff, or did you follow the kind of the vocal pattern a little bit and make the riff, or can you talk about how that song came to be?
That song came riff first. Yes. I wrote it at the time I was living in St. Augustine, Florida. I had a back porch and just like a table and chairs there that I would sit on in the mornings and the evenings and just play my guitar. And just like, I don't know, that riff is sort of similar in ways to the riff from the song Born on the FM Waves of the Heart, which is on the New Wave album. They're kind of, the way they're played is just like in similar ranges on the fretboard or whatever. And I think I stumbled it into from there somehow as like just a finger exercise I was doing, but it was the riff first and the feelings emotionally that were boiling inside of me. and then it all came together because like chord wise, it's a simple song. It's just E to B, A, like there's nothing to it. But the riff makes the song special.
Well, I have to say that when we got to tour with you guys, I was really, really very familiar with the new wave stuff and before, but I hadn't heard many of your more recent catalog or much of it. And I have to say that was the song that it was just magical every single night in terms of I felt like I was seeing the Replacements on their best night every single night when you guys played that song. It's so, and Willard does the drum. So I can't. I did that big snare machine gun Fugazi thing at the end. I know that this isn't like proper structure for an interview, but I had to get that off my chest. I think about that all of the time. That song. And
that was a really good tour, by the way. I miss that tour. I think about that tour often.
That was one of my favorite tours that we ever did. And I think I often think back. I think you guys are professionals at killing downtime. I think that was one of the most impressive aspects of your band. With the claw that you guys that I guess, did you purchase that somewhere on the West Coast, that Wolverine claw?
Oh yeah, I still have it. It's in the other room. Yeah, that was fun for slicing cans.
It began as fruit in the parking lot of an Olive Garden and escalated to cans of Guinness, I believe. But that was a good one. And what did your bus driver say about that claw? Was it damn near died?
Damn near died. Yeah. Wow. Good memory. Wow. That might have forever escaped from my head, and you not just brought that back. Yeah. I had left it out on the stairs, I guess, or something like that. I don't know. I'd always wanted one of those though. A Wolverine claw. Like if you have the chance to own your own Wolverine claw, if you see one in a pawn shop window, like I feel like it's good life advice that you should buy it.
You should definitely pick that up. Yeah. I also remember. I think it was where was Jim Ward's club? Is that somewhere in Texas that we played?
Yeah, is it El Paso?
El Paso, yeah. And we went to that store full of like curiosities. It was almost like a I don't know, it was one of the weirdest. You could buy a mummy at that store, but I remember going to that store with you guys. And that was probably the weirdest store I've ever been in my life. But
I regret not getting the mummy. Really.
Yeah. A sound investment, I think. You're definitely gonna.
I miss things like this, though. I miss traveling. I miss going into weird stores, or I don't know, having fun experiences.
That was something that I also kind of wanted to talk to you about. Like, as somebody that has toured the world and especially the United States as much as you have, what kind of perspectives have you kind of afforded yourself from this vantage point of being not able to do that stuff? Has it changed your relationship with touring and the way you think about it in general?
I guess for better or for worse, the way it lined up with my life, as like a survival instinct, it kind of kicked in where I was like, I need to think about this differently. I don't want to think about this like that I really want to be out on tour right now and I can't be, because that will drive me insane. And that is the truth of it. Like, I do really want to be out on tour right now. I wish I could be. I wish we all could be. But as opposed to that, like thinking about it more like, well, this is just that period of time in my life and my career where I don't tour. Like where like how like Dylan took 7 years off the road after a motorcycle accident or something like that, and then like you come back later or whatever. Like I've tried to think about it in that mindset, because it's not like, it's not preconceived. It's not, I didn't plot this, that there'd be a global pandemic and then I would stop touring. I'm just trying to lean into it in that way of like, and eventually I'll get back on the road, but it'll be more like a reunion then, or not just this weird 2-year limbo or 1-year limbo or whatever, where we just didn't tour. And I don't know, but I don't know. I try not to think about things like, like how's it going to change or what's it all mean or anything like that. And I do genuinely think that like, if our job is, like if we're artists and being an artist is being creative, then it's up to you to creatively think of a way to make this work, but yeah, I don't know.
I think that's a very, very good way of looking at it. I think that there's been a lot of despair, obviously, this year for a variety of reasons. And I think, but the thing that is kind of been the most strange and disappointing to me, I think, is the amount of artists that I know personally that have kind of just thrown up their hands and said, well, I'm not really interested in finding a way to make this work this year. I'm just going to wait until I can get back on the road to make something happen, which I just it's nice to hear.
I think that's dangerous.
I think so.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
Because I think that what'll happen then is that once we can all tour again, you have to think about the way that's going to work. And that's why, like, specifically even with doing Stay Alive, where I was like, I want to put this out now. I don't want to wait to try to time it to where like, okay, touring's about to open up. We'll put out a record and then we'll go on tour immediately. Just like, because everyone's going to be fucking doing that. And then you're just going to, it's going to flood, and it'll be like, I don't know. We need to be strategic about like starting it back up again, about how we do things, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think that there's going to be, I think that some people have viewed this time this year as like pushing pause on their career. But I just, given that nothing in the universe has like an actual pause button, and not treating this as just like time that is passing, I think is a little bit foolish. So that's when I saw you putting out that record, I was very happy to see. It makes me very happy to see people treating this year like a year, like that things have to happen, and it's not just about, okay, well, we're going to batten down the hatches and see, like, we'll see when it's over. That's just not the way time or life works. And I think you're very right that there's going to be some interesting supply and demand issues with live music and music in general when this situation does resolve in whatever way it does resolve.
I mean, think about like Europe alone, which we've toured together, even pre-pandemic. My European booking agent was booking as far as November 2021. So this was like in January. They were already talking about November 2021. So coming out of this, like, just the line of bands trying to get into clubs even will be insane. But yeah, I don't know. I view it also as like that there's a split of that, like, we do two things. We're touring musicians and we're performers, live performers, right? But also like we're songwriters, and the songwriter recording artist part of it, like, has not been affected at all by the pandemic. And that's still just as valid a part of your job, if not a more important part of your job. To just like work on your songs, just work on songwriting right now. Nothing about what has happened in the world has affected your ability to do that right now. So I don't know. It's funny, like, cause I see so many people who I know who are touring friends and stuff where it's like during this time, they're like, I got a dog. And I'm like, oh, wow. What are you doing? What are you going to do once it's time to tour again?
A short-term solution. Yes.
Yeah. There is that is an interesting aspect of this time too. Is people? I definitely see some aspects of short term solutions to the thing. And call me an eternal optimist, but I do think that this is going to resolve. Sooner than when the doom and gloom people think it will. I have no idea what that means. I just try not to think about the whole big picture thing too much because of how little control I have over that. I'm as I said, I've been trying to just busy myself with I think similar things to what you've tried to do, which is just try and create as much stuff as you can, because I think that a lot of people, including myself, who spend most of their year touring traditionally, entertain themselves in the van with fantasies about all the stuff that they're going to do when they get home, and then they don't ever do it. And so now as we kind of spoke about earlier, this is kind of the year to put up or shut up on all your hobbies if you're a road dog, all of your projects. So I've learned to cook.
There you go. That's a huge one, though. For years, I was just right. I was like, I would walk. Me and the band, me and Kyle and Ross all lived together in a house up until a few months ago, and we would just walk across the street to the variety store and get a pizza and walk. Like that was pretty much every day, and so Kyle was the first one to really bloom as a cook, and he's doing very well. But I've been inspired by Kyle's culinary kick, so working on that too. What do you like to cook these days? What are you into?
Well, I do this like delivery service thing called Purple Carrot, and they like drop off a box of ingredients with recipes in it. Oh, wow. And it's funny because like I've been doing it since the beginning of the pandemic because I'm a parent. I have an 11-year-old. I do month on, month off parenting. But like I'm just historically a terrible cook as a parent, and like being home all the time now, I'm like, all right, I just need to get better at this. I need to offer us more variety of what we're eating. So it's always different meals every week. But it's funny because I took like a month off where I was like, okay, I think I got it. I've been doing it for like 6 or 7 months now. I should be good. But then that month off, it was straight up back to baked potatoes and mac and cheese and shit like that. So I was like, nope, I need to get back on it.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to kind of like get into for a little bit and then just kind of slide off of. I find I have to try and keep myself working on it, because years of touring have not put me in the best habits of going out and buying groceries. Like I'll buy groceries and be like, I'm going to make some healthy food this week, and then a lot of it just kind of rots in the fridge. And then I'm like, wait a second, I have to go back to the grocery store. This doesn't make any sense. Like,
it's not a writer.
Yeah, exactly. It's right. Like there's not just hummus when I get home. So, no, I feel you on that. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about just kind of about this year and kind of how you're using it. After you put out Stay Alive, have you just gotten back into like a general headspace, or just continue at a general headspace of chipping away at material that can be used for Devouring Mothers and Against Me, and maybe perhaps another solo record? Or do you take breaks when you're done, or do you just keep it going at this point?
Well, usually like there's the cycle to it, that of like, you record a record, right? And then there's 3 to 4 months in between when you finished with it and when it comes out. And in that period of time, tours start getting announced, you start playing shows, you build up, you release the record, you go on tour. So there's those periods of times in that kind of cycle where your brain just switches to a different mode, where I'll like not be writing because I'm totally focused on doing all these other things. And then you get back into okay, I need to start working on songs again a couple months later. But this time it's been different in that way where like, after I finished, I was definitely like, well, I guess I'll just start working on the next one, But I did like all last month, I did press like 5 days a week for a fucking full month straight, not on the weekends. But I really kind of burnt myself out from it. It's the first time I've ever done like nothing but press in that way, where you didn't have the fulfillment of at least playing a show to kind of like, fill your soul back up, like lift you back up. You can do it again the next day, when it's just like press after press after press, and you're just like, fuck this. And it's all fucking Zooms and shit like that. It really ground me down. And then at the beginning of, November, I fucking broke my foot. And I've been in like a hole of depression for the past like week or two, just bummed out. But getting back into it,
Yeah. Just putting it kind of, there's no better feeling though than, as we kind of talked about earlier, than having some kind of creative capital that I always feel like it's like if you're like a farmer and it's like a grain silo, and even if there's just like a little bit of grain in it, you're like, yes, I'm not going to starve this winter. It's like it's going to be okay. I just need to keep putting stuff in there. And it's
really, like when you think about all the assets, and I hate to use terminology about this, but I will. When you think about all the assets you need for releasing a record, whether that's like videos, pictures, the components of a record, the artwork for a record, like all those things that need to be in place before a record can come out. Like there's just always so much work you can be doing. If you don't feel inspired in one area, or you don't have the ability to do one area of what you do, whether that's like, oh, I can't make noise right now because of a neighbor or something, so I gotta do something that's quiet. Like there's just always something you can be doing. And in my opinion. And realistically, if you're a musician and if you're an artist and if you want to make a living doing this, like you need to hustle. You need to work your ass off. You need to be working all the time. You need to be working through the highs and the lows. You need to be working like, I don't know, just to survive,
I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think that in general, there's obviously a greater conversation right now happening that's really being highlighted by this pandemic, about the importance of live music and its value, and, conversations around streaming and the, and the fairness around that. But I think that the thing that I keep in mind is basically what you just said, that if you want to do anything creative, you've basically you have to constantly be working on some aspect of it. And as uncomfortable as a notion as it is, I think that just because you make art and that's how you kind of identify what you do, doesn't mean you have the right to make a living at it. And I think that's an uncomfortable thing that I think that, as I said, it's part of a greater conversation. But as you said, you kind of always have to be hustling in some way to make your dream work, rather than there is no kind of like, do a couple things here and then sit back and watch the money come in. You've got to get out there and make it all happen. Right. I totally agree with you about that. And that's the thing that I've kind of found to be the solace during this year for myself is, and it sounds like the same for you, is to just kind of stay busy and focus on the attributes that I can affect, rather than be focusing on the things that I can't control.
100%.
Well, I've got a couple more questions for you, and I really appreciate you again, you being on the podcast and talking about bashing out songs and the heck of a year that we're all having collectively. I wanted to talk a little bit about your influences, because this is something that I haven't yet had the pleasure of delving into with you. When we were on tour, it was when Tom Petty passed away, and you did share your feelings about how I remember you were talking about was it the Dan Electro Traveling Wilburys guitar that you got? Was that your first guitar?
Yeah, it wasn't a Dan Electro, but it was a traveling
Okay.
Wilburys guitar. It was like I think it was made by Epiphone or something like that, but it kind of looked like a Dan Electro. Yeah, it was a unique guitar for sure. That was my first electric guitar, technically. Yes.
And what was the first, do you remember like a first kind of moment that you like became aware of and felt a real connection with rock and roll? Was it on the radio or was it on the TV or what?
It was the radio. It was the radio first. I mean, all my first musical memories are related to what my parents were listening to, and then growing up a military brat and living overseas, I wasn't as exposed to MTV as maybe other people were. Like MTV didn't come into my life until like the 5th grade, let's say. And that was when like the visual component of rock and roll really kicked in. Initially for me, it was all just like listening to records on my own and stuff that I would discover through whatever trail I was picking up on at the time,
Yeah. And do you remember what artist kind of first really put the wind in your sails about rock and roll? Was it Tom Petty?
The first cassette I ever bought after I got my first Walkman was Def Leppard Hysteria.
Nice.
And Def Leppard led me into from Def Leppard, I jumped to bands like Bon Jovi and Guns N' Roses and Skid Row. And those were my first bands that I felt like I discovered on my own. And all my first cassette tapes. And Guns N' Roses were the band that really connected with me. Like I really connected with Guns N' Roses. I remember, 3rd grade, standing at my school bus stop, screaming the lyrics to Night Train at a girl I had a crush on at the bus stop across the street, and I had no idea what they meant by Night Train. I didn't know that it was alcohol. I thought they were just on a train at night, and then when CD players came out, like 1990, 91 or whatever, that was when I got my first one. And with my first CD player, I was given a copy of Full Moon Fever. And then my dad just gave it to me with the CD player. I have no idea if he was even that big of a fan. But, and then it was my first CD. So I listened to the hell out of that CD and it's a great record. And so that was like my first connection with Petty.
Do you think there's something about Tom Petty and his music across his career that kind of keeps you listening and is there something that keeps you inspired as a songwriter? The only reason why I ask is because like Tom Petty was capable of cranking out his best material or things that could be considered up in the top of his canon, even towards the very end of his life. And do songwriters like that have an inspiration for you or a meaning for you? Seeing that kind of consistent quality can be achieved at any stage of any career?
100%. Yeah. Especially like, in considering myself like committed to doing this with my life, at this point, at 40 years old, I'm like, my birthday was 2 weeks ago and I'm really fixated on it. Like I'm
Happy
40.
belated.
Thank you. But at this point, like, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, one way or the other. I've decided that. Right. So in looking to inspiration from other artists, looking at artists who've had long sustained careers, you can find you can find hope and solace in that because you can look at other artists and be like, okay, well, if things aren't going your way right then, or like you're having a down point, you can look at their careers and be like, all right, well, they had down moments too, and they got through that. They came back around. Look at how their songwriting changed in these ways, and seeing the ways they like approached reinventing themselves and like staying relevant. Like I'm just fascinated by that, regardless of the medium of art, not just with musicians, visual artists, photographers, whatever, anybody who's made art their life. But so there's few artists that you can do that with in rock and roll that, have really compelling output over their career. And Tom Petty's definitely one of them, so like looking at And I guess like that's speaking to like songwriters. These are songwriters. Like Tom Petty was a songwriter. He wasn't somebody who had his material written for him. He wasn't just solely a performer, you know. I'm fascinated by it because it's also like, as I was saying earlier, you know, like it's always the same chords. So it's fucking interesting to me thinking that like, look at what this guy has been doing for 20 years using G and C and D, you know, like how many Petty songs use those chords and they're fucking insane. Like classic songs.
They are
that's inspiring.
Beyond classic songs. I mean, it's that able to get more out of a song than than the Beatles were able to get out of throwing 12 chords into a song. A lot of the time, I share your love of Tom Petty in that way, and I mean it really was your words on stage, your tribute to Tom Petty, that made me really take his back catalog seriously and really delve into, you know, beyond the surface hits that everyone's aware of through FM radio. So I thank you very much for that.
Right on.
And also, I really one other artist that I really wanted to talk to you about was the Replacements, and I was just curious, what does that band mean to you, and do you have any strong feelings about that band? Because I know you've covered them, and that's how I discovered the Replacements, was through your Bastards of Young covers. So I was just curious if you would delve a little into your Replacements relationship.
I guess when it comes down to it, I really identify with Paul Westerberg, and I say that in the way of the first Replacements song I ever heard was Androgynous, and you know, being 18 years old, hearing that song as a closeted transgender person who didn't have themselves figured out at all, to hear Paul Westerberg speak the exact emotions I was feeling, I just connected. You know, I was like, how is this person describing this so accurately without knowing what this experience is? You know, like blew my mind, the talent of songwriting and emoting that is there in Androgynous. But then connecting with them further, you know, that kind of like, I don't know, that the attitude that Paul Westerberg has, like, and their approach to making art, the kind of like shooting yourself in the foot loser type attitude with it, you know, like self-defeating in a way, but also like I strive to his level of brilliance, and I identify with some of those shortcomings that he has. But like, you know, if you look at like Stay Alive, my genuine approach to the songs with the drum machines on there was emulating Paul Westerberg in a way, where some of those great Paul Westerberg songs are like, you know, Within Your Reach, stuff like that, where there's just this weird ass lo-fi drum machine that just is playing the loop through the whole thing, doing nothing special, that the song was just obviously written to, and it was just brilliant then and there, captured like that. You know, there's something so special about those songs that like sometimes you know, like, I don't know, sometimes you forget that if it's right, it's just right, and just to go with it. And Westberg always reminds me of that in those moments. And that's, you know, what I was trying to do with Stay Alive, was definitely inspired by him. And I've taken many leads from the Replacements or him over the years. And I don't know. I think that he's a brilliant songwriter.
And one of the things that I also, I thought, and I mentioned it earlier, but, when I was listening to your Against Me live record, there's moments where your voice sounds has that perfect Westerberg growl to it, and just it makes me so happy. And that's why I really, really love your band a lot, and a lot of it has to do with that. As I said, that I get the Replacements feeling, not in terms of like the complete self-sabotage and living in complete misery that the Replacements did, but more of like the I've never been on tour with a band where
I felt a stronger feeling of now that is a proper rock and roll band, and I really do mean that. So thank you again for taking our rinky dink band out on tour, because that was a great time.
Well, I feel the same way about your band, Luke. So that's just that,
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I'll tell Ross and Kyle; they'll be delighted. Cool. I had a couple more questions about the Replacements. Did you get around to reading Trouble Boys?
I have not read it. No, shamefully, and I've had a couple opportunities to. I believe I have it. Just for whatever reason, I haven't jumped into it.
Highly recommended. Very, very sad story, but I think you'll really enjoy it. It kind of provides some kind of context for the madness, and it's harder to think of a band with more mythology around them. They're a band's band in terms of the madness, I think that it's the closest you'll get to some kind of rational explanation, if there is such a thing, for some of the stuff that band did.
I have a documentary, this like bootleg documentary DVD on them that's just like all of their television performances and all these random European interviews and stuff that's really fascinating that you can watch, and it tells their story, one way or other. And I'm definitely hip to like a lot of the mythology around them. And I don't know, I do grasp it anytime I can hear like some kind of story about them or whatever. And I did the other day, actually, I got that Pleased to Meet Me re-release. Yeah. It's really nice, like has a booklet in there, all the pictures and stuff. And, like Against Me, our second record as the Eternal Cowboy, we recorded at Ardent Studios in Memphis, Tennessee, because the Replacements recorded Pleased to Meet Me there. Specifically, like called the studio, booked that studio because that's where the Replacements recorded. And they would tell us stories about the Replacements when we were there, and how they would like, when they were recording, they would like get drunk and throw up in their hands and throw it onto the walls. And I don't know, it's just crazy stuff like that.
That is, I guess that's par for the course for them. Yeah. I think the last thing I'll say about the Replacements is, and the one story that always got me the most was the story about how after Bob was in the band and they were still trying to prove to themselves that they were crazy, and they kind of ratcheted up their insanity to try and prove to themselves that they still had that quality. I think it was when they were opening for Tom Petty in '89. Their management rented them an RV, and on the first day, while the thing was driving, they got fucking hammered, and they ripped out all the furniture and threw it out the window while they were driving on the highway, and like ripped out the roof and knocked so basically it was just a shell with no walls or a roof anymore. And then it started to rain, and they just sat there in the broken glass, like miserable, as this thing went down the highway into Florida. Which is for some reason I just love that visual. It's very it's a very powerful visual of the Replacements for me. But yes, I would recommend that.
The DVD that I was telling you about, my favorite interview with them on it took place somewhere in Italy in like the 80s. And it's very clearly the morning, and they're very clearly super, super hungover. And the night before, they've all shaved off their eyebrows. So they're like trying to give this really serious interview with a reporter where there's like an obvious language barrier. It's a little stilted, and you've done European interviews, I'm sure, similarly. But they're just like trying their best to hold it together and keep it serious, but they've got no eyebrows the whole time. And it's incredible.
Very hard to keep it serious when you don't have eyebrows. Yeah. That reminds me of, there was, I saw this thing about somebody doing an impression of what a German interviewer is like. It's typically like they kind of put the microphone up to you and they say, and this is after you've played, they're like, I did not very much so like the first and the seventh song. They were of low quality, but I somewhat liked the eighth and ninth song. They were okay. What do you have to say to this?
Oh my God. I gotta read this to you, because like, don't get me wrong. I fucking love Germany.
Of course.
I love touring in Germany. It's my favorite place. But sometimes, yes, the interviews are like this. And I wanna read. I did an interview literally last night, a German interview literally last night, and this was a question from it. As an artist, these songs were meant to sound different. Isn't it a great feeling to hear them in these unusual shapes? I'm like, I'm sitting here. I'm like, what do you hear them in shapes? What?
Yeah. Did Google Translate? Yeah.
Anyway,
That is.
I hope that doesn't come back to bite me in the ass. I
No.
answered the question, but it was just, again, it's like these questions. It's that sometimes the question isn't a question. You know, like your first record is great. This new record is shit. Why is this?
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't fucking know. You're telling me your opinion. It's not a question.
That's not a question. There's always lots to unpack in those interviews, and decide what you want to address and decide what you want to take on the chin, and then just keep moving forward. You know, but I couldn't agree more with you on that too. So I have a couple last questions for you. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. So I just wanted to ask, generally speaking, you've got to rub shoulders with a lot of iconic people and a lot of extremely just straight up famous people. Are there any people that you've felt a genuine amount of or degree of being starstruck, or have you kind of developed a bit of a thicker skin towards these situations?
I get starstruck still really easily, and there's certain people that no matter how many interactions I've had with them, I can't get past it. We toured extensively with Green Day, but any interaction I have with Green Day, I am just like deer in headlights. Like, you're Billy Joe Armstrong, you're Trey Cool, you're fucking Mike Dirnt, like blows my mind. I cannot get past that. Same with like the Foo Fighters. Anytime I've talked to Dave Grohl, I cannot get past the fact that he's Dave Grohl. Just like, I played Eddie Vedder's Ohana Festival a year or two ago, and after the set, there's Eddie Vedder, and he's standing there talking to Brendan Canty from Fugazi. And like, clearly it's my moment to go up and talk to Eddie Vedder and Brendan, and I've talked to Brendan a bunch. Brendan I can talk to, even though I'm still starstruck, but I couldn't go up and talk to Eddie Vedder. What business do I have to be talking to fucking Eddie Vedder? Like all that shit. I still get those moments. If like anytime I've ever seen anybody from Guns N' Roses, I freak out. And I'm just like fascinated. Like, we played a festival one time with Velvet Revolver, and I remember after the set, like Duff was there, and I'm standing next to Duff, and he has on like a JanSport backpack because he played the show. He has his stuff in the backpack. He's probably leaving to go home now. But I was just so fascinated, like that. Wow, Duff McKagan wears JanSport backpacks. Just blown away.
Take a little note of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I still very much get starstruck, like Fat Mike, also someone who I, perpetually starstruck by, although the last time I hung out with him, I was able to get past that a little bit. And I felt like, okay, maybe like this is a little bit of human connection here. And it's not just like my teenage heroes, know? Yeah. That's
it's great to still have that kind of connection with, your heroes of rock and roll, and the kind of mythology that we absorb rock and roll through, and still be able to view these artists and people as still like, oh my God, it's you. We played a festival with the Foo Fighters last year, and we were watching the band live. I think they call it live play. I didn't know who they were, but I recognized their songs that I heard on the radio a million times. But at the side of the stage was Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins, and we kind of intercepted Dave Grohl. I'm like, Dave Grohl, I just want to say, love your body of work. And Ross said to Dave Grohl, hey Dave, remember the time you went like this? Kiku, 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 kiku. That was sick. Which is my favorite celebrity.
Russ rolls.
Yeah, that's a good one. You gotta give it to Ross.
That's incredible. Yeah. Bruce Springsteen also, I get incredibly I can't handle my shit around Bruce Springsteen. I actually ran from Bruce Springsteen last time I had any kind of interaction with him. I dodged Springsteen and escaped from my dressing room before he could come and find me. I was so freaked out by it, but yeah.
Was it just to kind of to not open yourself up to an embarrassing moment or anything like that? Or was it to just try and bookend?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. It was after I had come out and Springsteen was at a festival and he was coming back to say hey. And I realized that it was going to be some kind of congratulations, you've come out, a genuine moment. And appreciated, don't get me wrong, but I was I just can't have that moment with Bruce Springsteen. I can't have Bruce Springsteen congratulate me on becoming a woman. I just don't want to do it. So, I just bolted and hid, and did not talk to Springsteen when he was coming to find me.
Well, I think you might be one of the only human beings alive that can say that sentence. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you that has significantly surprised you in terms of their demeanor, in terms of your heroes, or has everybody been super cool and super gracious the entire time?
Cyndi Lauper was intense. Cyndi Lauper was intense for sure. But I guess I didn't really know what to expect from that situation, so it wasn't surprise. But I was surprised that she was as present as she was, and it was a real, we had a rapport. We hung out for a second. We worked on songs together. Miley Cyrus blew my mind. I thought I was really impressed by her in that she was really genuinely cool as far as I could never say any criticism about her because she just I don't know. She invited me over to her house, I hung out at her house. We smoked weed together. We jammed in her backyard. It wasn't there was no construct about it. It wasn't a fake situation. It was just very, it was real. And I was this person doesn't know me. They flew me out here. They're being really a great host. Thank you. I was surprised by that for sure. And John Cameron Mitchell, I was surprised by him. He was great. I had an excellent night with John Cameron Mitchell in Spain one time that blew my mind. But yeah, I've been lucky. I've had a lot of good run-ins.
That is awesome. And I had to ask one question on the Miley Cyrus subject. Was Billy Ray around, or was it just Miley?
It was just Miley. It wasn't her mom and dad weren't there. None of her brothers or sisters or anything like that. Her crew were there and her manager and stuff like that, and then Joan was there, Joan Jett, and Joan's crew and everybody like that. And Adam was there from my band, so there was a lot of people there, but yeah, not her family.
So you guys covered Androgynous, right?
Yeah, we did Androgynous, and then we did my song True Trans Soul Rebel together as well.
Hell yeah. And is Miley Cyrus a Replacements fan?
I guess we didn't really talk about it. I don't know.
Quite possibly. We're going to have to, that's
quite possible.
That's a question for the universe, but I was genuinely curious about that. So I'm glad you broached the subject and not me, but Laura, I don't have much left in terms of pre-prepared questions, and I appreciate your time so much. The last thing I'd like to ask is just a bit of a more open-ended question, but what's next for you the rest remaining this year?
I kind of been wishing that, how there's those 2 weeks around Christmas time that are forever ingrained in you from school years of well, this is the break. This is when nothing happens. It's totally acceptable to just watch TV. I kind of want that to start right now. Yeah. This year has been long, I'm tired, and having a broken foot and being immobile, I'm just I just don't feel very motivated right now. And I kind of those natural resets that occur, okay, new year coming up. Sometimes I'll give myself extended breaks like that of once the new year starts, then I'm committed to it. This is my schedule. I'm going, we're going to start work on the new record. So I'm kind of waiting for that reset right now, but yeah, I mean, just like working on songs, trying to figure out, I don't know, trying to navigate the world of like, I guess all we do now is live stream. So how acceptable is it? How often can you acceptably live stream a show just to still play a show, And given how often you can do that, when can I schedule the next one? So trying to think about what's my year next year. And how what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? It's strange. It's like really weird. Like I'm just pretty alone here in Chicago, and feeling like you're drifting in this void and feeling like, okay, well, this is what happens in the event there's a global pandemic. And knowing this now, I do have faith that we'll come out of it. But should I ever get stuck in a situation like this again, how do I want to be prepared for that? And what do I want to make different in my life? I feel like this is that eye-opening moment,
Test run.
of realizing, and of realizing like certain ways, like, okay, this is the results of what your life becomes if you spent 20 years on the road, like how many things fall away and like what you're left with in a type of way where I'm like, all right, going forward, I need to figure things out accordingly.
Word. I think I feel the exact same way, like kind of coming home to this whole situation and realizing that I don't really have much in the way of like home skills. My entire life has been built around doing what I need to do to get back in the van. And this is
right. But then it's a balance of like working on those home skills while at the same time not neglecting your skills as a musician or an artist or whatever, to make sure that they stay practiced or whatever. That's the balance you need to strike, so still doing vocal warm-ups I find is important, things like that.
Still making sure that you can do your screams even if there's no one to hear them, but well, what's the line? The Harry Nilsson line. He said, "Keep your powder dry," or something like that. One of his.
I like that. Like Nilsson. Yeah.
And my final question is: do you have any advice to the people out there, or everybody else that's going through this entire thing and trying to make a go of this strange year? Any advice to share with the kids of the world?
Just, I don't know. If you're surviving, you're surviving. That's all that's really important right now, right? I don't know about advice. Try to stay focused. Do what makes you happy, right?
Fair enough. Well, again, I'd like to thank you, Laura, for being on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. And it was great to reminisce about a couple touring memories together, and I appreciate you pulling back the curtain a little bit on your process. It was I always love talking about writing, and again, you've got a wonderful, awesome new record called "Stay Alive." Everybody, check it out wherever you listen to music. And thanks again, Laura. I will.
My pleasure.
I will see you soon. So just so you know, I don't think we can. If you can't close your window just quite yet because the thing has to finish uploading. But I'm going to stop recording now.
All right.